Hey guys, tonight we're re-stepping into the long story of one of the most influential empires in world history. The Ottoman Empire. It rose from a small frontier principality in northwestern Anatolia and expanded across 3 continents, ruling lands that stretched from the Balkans to the Arabian deserts, from Cairo to Budapest, and from the Black Sea to the Mediterranean. Before we begin, feel free to subscribe if you enjoy .com/slow historical documentaries like this one. It helps the channel grow and brings more peaceful episodes your way. The Ottomans built their empire over centuries. They developed powerful armies, organized a complex administrative system, and created a society that blended many cultures, languages, and religions. Their sultans ruled from the palace of Topkapi in Istanbul, directing armies, trade routes, legal reforms, and diplomacy. But the same empire that expanded rapidly also faced slow, long-term challenges, military changes, global economic shifts, internal rivalries, rising nationalism, and pressure from European powers all contributed to its eventual fragmentation. What began as a small warrior state became a world empire, and then, gradually, a multi-layered, struggling system trying to keep pace with a changing world. In this calm documentary, we'll explore how the Ottoman Empire grew, how it sustained itself for centuries, and how the forces of history finally pulled it apart. In the late 13th century, Western Anatolia is a landscape of shifting borders and competing powers. The Byzantine Empire still controls parts of the region, but its authority has weakened after years of internal conflict and external pressure. At the same time, Badius, Turkish principalities known as beyliks occupy the frontier zones created by the slow decline of Byzantine control. These beyliks developed their own leadership structures, military forces, and political ambitions. Among them is a small principality ruled by Osman, whose name later becomes associated with the Ottoman dynasty. The environment in which the Ottomans first appear is defined by instability. Frontier zones are places where different cultures, languages, and religious communities interact. They are also areas where military opportunities arise frequently. Local leaders confront raids, defend settlements, and compete for territory. Success in this environment depends on organization, military skill, and the ability to attract followers. Osman's principality begins with limited territory. Its earliest settlements lie near the Byzantine borderlands, where conflict and opportunity coexist. Ottoman forces rely on mounted warriors, experienced in fast-moving raids and small-scale battles, typical of frontier warfare. These early campaigns do not immediately resemble the large-scale conquests of later centuries. Instead, they reflect the gradual accumulation of land through continuous pressure on vulnerable borders. Historical records from this period are limited, but surviving accounts describe Ottoman rulers forming alliances, absorbing smaller groups, and making use of shifting political conditions. The weakening of Byzantine defenses allows frontier beyliks to expand slowly into nearby towns and fortresses. The Ottomans follow this pattern, securing small gains that strengthen their strategic position. These gains include control of villages, farmlands, and trade routes resources, essential for sustaining future growth. The Ottomans also benefit from the movement of people across the frontier. Conflicts and economic difficulties cause populations to relocate. Some groups seek protection under Ottoman leadership. Others join as soldiers, attracted by opportunities for land and income. This ability to integrate diverse groups contributes to the early growth of the principality. The frontier environment encourages mobility, and the Ottomans use it to build a flexible and expanding community. As Ottoman territory grows, so does the need for organization. Early rulers establish administrative practices suited to their environment. Land is distributed to military supporters in exchange for service. Local leaders oversee taxation and security. These practices create a system capable of managing expanding territory without extensive bureaucracy. The system remains simple but effective, allowing the Ottomans to govern newly acquired lands while continuing frontier operations. Relations with neighboring powers shaped the early development of the principality. The Ottomans faced competition from other Turkish beyliks, each seeking influence in Anatolia. Diplomatic agreements, marriages, and military campaigns define these interactions. In some cases, alliances provide stability that enables further expansion. In others, conflicts limit growth or redirect Ottoman efforts. The ability to navigate these relationships becomes an important factor in the rise of the dynasty. Byzantine territories on the frontier experience increasing pressure during this period. Internal divisions weaken Byzantine political control, making some towns and fortresses vulnerable to capture. Ottoman forces exploit these weaknesses through persistent campaigns. The goal is not rapid conquest, but steady expansion that strengthens their position. Each captured settlement adds new resources and strategic advantage. The landscape of western Anatolia also contributes to early Ottoman development. The region includes fertile plains, trade routes connecting inland areas to coastal cities, and mountain passes that serve as natural defensive lines. Control of these features provides economic and military benefits. As the Ottomans expand, they gradually secure important geographical positions that support long-term stability. Religious dynamics also play a role in frontier life. Muslim and Christian communities interact regularly across borders. These interactions influence local alliances and create opportunities for negotiation. The Ottomans governed diverse populations from the beginning, developing practices that allow different communities to coexist under their leadership. These early patterns foreshadow administrative approaches that become more formalized in later centuries. The early Ottomans do not yet represent a major regional power. Their territory remains limited, their resources modest, and their political influence confined to frontier zones. But the combination of effective military practice, strategic expansion, and adaptable administration lays the foundation for future growth. The conditions of the frontier, its mobility, its tensions, and its opportunities shape the character of the principality. During its formative years, by the early 14th century, the Ottomans have become one of several rising powers in western Anatolia. Their control of key locations strengthens their position. Their growing reputation attracts new followers. Their leadership develops experience in both governance and warfare, while the principality remains small compared to later centuries. The essential structures of Ottoman power begin to take shape during this early period. As the 14th century begins, the Ottoman principality moves from its initial frontier base toward a more organized phase of expansion. Osman, the dynasty's founder, establishes the early direction, but his son Orhan plays a significant role in transforming small territorial gains into a growing regional power. Their combined efforts mark the transition from a limited frontier community to a principality capable of sustained conquest and administration. The earliest Ottoman advances follow patterns common to frontier warfare. Small cavalry units conduct raids on nearby settlements, testing defenses and gathering information. These engagements create pressure on neighboring Byzantine towns. When opportunities arise, such as weakened garrisons, internal disputes, or supply shortages, the Ottomans move to capture strategic points. These expansions are incremental, but each success strengthens the foundation for further advances. One significant development in this period is the capture of important towns that anchor Ottoman control. Under Osman, early campaigns focus on the region around Santiani. These areas provide staging grounds for future operations. Under Orhan, the principality targets more substantial urban centers. The capture of Bursa in 1326 marks a major turning point. Bursa becomes the first major Ottoman capital, offering administrative facilities, economic resources, and a stable base for future expansion. Bursa's transition from frontier town to Ottoman center involves administrative reorganization. New officials oversee taxation, security, and public order. Markets continue to operate, benefiting from increased stability. Agricultural production supports the population and provides revenue. These changes demonstrate the Ottomans' ability to govern newly acquired territories effectively, a crucial skill as expansion continues. Following Bursa, Orhan leads campaigns toward the Sea of Marmara. The capture of Iznik Nicaea in 1331 and Izmit in 1337 extends Ottoman control across key regions of northwestern Anatolia. These cities hold historical and strategic value, having served important roles in Byzantine administration. Their loss reflects the further weakening of Byzantine authority in the region. Their incorporation into the Ottoman principality expands economic resources and strengthens administrative structures. During this period, the Ottomans also focus on building a more organized military system. While early forces rely heavily on cavalry from frontier warriors, expansion requires additional structure. Orhan introduced a standing infantry unit known as the Yaya. Though relatively small compared to later military formations, the Yaya represent an early attempt to create a regular infantry force, supported directly by the state. This development prepares the principality for larger campaigns and more complex military operations. Diplomatic relationships shape Ottoman expansion as much as military action. The principality interacts with other Turkish beyliks, forming alliances or engaging in conflicts depending on political circumstances. These relationships influence the balance of power in Anatolia. At times, cooperation with neighboring beyliks strengthens Ottoman campaigns. In other periods, competition slows expansion. The Ottomans navigate these dynamics carefully, maintaining flexibility as political conditions shift. Relations with the Byzantine Empire also play a role. Byzantine internal struggles, including civil wars and political disputes, create opportunities for Ottoman intervention. At times, Byzantine factions seek Ottoman support, offering concessions or territory in exchange for assistance. These agreements allow the Ottomans to expand influence without direct conflict. At other times, Ottoman forces take advantage of weakened Byzantine defenses to capture additional territory. The Ottomans' growing presence in Anatolia gradually alters regional dynamics. Trade routes passing through their territory come under their administration. Agricultural lands contribute to economic strength. Urban centers under Ottoman control become part of a developing administrative network. These changes increase the principality's capacity to support larger populations and larger armies. Population movements continue to influence expansion. As Ottoman-controlled territories expand, they attract settlers from nearby rural areas. Some join the principalities seeking security or economic opportunity. Others arrive through population shifts caused by regional conflicts. The integration of new communities strengthens the Ottoman demographic base and supports agricultural and military needs. Orhan's reign also marks the beginning of Ottoman involvement in the Balkans. In the mid-14th century, Ottoman forces cross into Europe for the first time. Initial operations are small, involving raids or support for allies in regional conflicts. However, these early movements establish a presence that later becomes central to Ottoman expansion. The principality's ability to project military power across the Dardanelles indicates a growing level of organization and capability. The economic foundations of Ottoman expansion become increasingly visible during this period. Revenues from newly conquered land support military operations. Agricultural production, market taxes, and customs duties contribute to the state's income. These resources allow the Ottomans to maintain their forces, support administrative growth, and fund further campaigns. The principality's economic structure becomes more complex, moving beyond the simple frontier system of earlier decades. Administrative practices continue to develop. The Ottomans appoint local governors to oversee specific regions, ensuring more consistent governance. Land grants to military supporters evolve into the timur system, which later becomes a core component of Ottoman provincial administration. Although still in early stages, these developments lay the groundwork for the highly organized state that emerges in later centuries. By the time of Orhan's death, the Ottomans have moved far beyond their initial frontier base. They control key cities, command important trade routes, and maintain a growing military force. Their principality is no longer one of many competing beyliks, but an emerging regional power with expanding influence in both Anatolia and southeastern Europe. This period of steady, structured expansion sets the stage for the major transformations of the later 14th and 15th centuries. The next section examines how the capture of Bursa and further conquests contribute to the formation of a more centralized Ottoman state. In the early 14th century, Bursa stands as one of the most important Byzantine cities in northwestern Anatolia. It rises along the foothills of Mount Uludak, where cold streams descend from the mountain into fertile plains. For generations, the city has served as a regional center of administration, agriculture, and trade. Its markets depend on the movement of goods through the valleys. Its walls protect a population connected by workshops, orchards, and caravan routes that link it to the wider region. When Ottoman forces turn their attention to Bursa, they approach a city that is still economically active, but politically vulnerable. The Byzantine Empire faces internal struggles, and its ability to reinforce distant towns has weakened. The Ottomans understand this landscape well. They do not attempt a single overwhelming assault. Instead, their strategy unfolds slowly, shaped by the conditions of frontier warfare. Ottoman troops begin by securing the surrounding countryside. Villages that supply the city are brought under Ottoman control. Paths used by merchants and farmers shift into Ottoman hands. Over time, Bursa becomes increasingly isolated, not through destruction but through steady pressure on its connections to the outside world. This approach reflects a pattern already familiar in earlier campaigns. Expansion through gradual control rather than rapid confrontation. The siege lasts several years. During this period, the Ottomans establish positions around the city and maintain continuous presence. The extended duration reflects both the strength of Bursa as fortifications and the Ottomans' deliberate method of supplies inside the city become limited. Communication with Byzantine authorities becomes difficult. The balance slowly moves in favor of the Ottomans, not through sudden advances, but through sustained control of the region. When Bursa finally surrenders in 1326, the event marks a turning point in Ottoman history. For the first time, the principality gains a major urban center. The transfer of authority is not accompanied by large-scale destruction. Workshops continue to operate, markets open. Agricultural activity around the city resumes under new leadership. The Ottomans recognize the importance of maintaining the city's functions, and they integrate Bursa into their growing administrative system. With Bursa, the Ottomans acquire more than territory. They gain experience in governing a complex urban population. The city contains institutions that require organization, courts, markets, religious foundations, and production centers. Managing these elements introduces the Ottomans to forms of administration that go beyond the frontier structures of their earlier years. They begin recording taxes more systematically, organizing labor obligations, and overseeing local authorities. Bursa also becomes a symbolic center. The tombs of Osman and Orhan, built in the city, mark it as the heart of the early dynasty. These sites affirm dynastic continuity and provide a focal point for emerging Ottoman identity. They also reflect the principality's transition from a shifting frontier force to a settled political power. Economically, Bursa strengthens the principality in several ways. The surrounding plains support agriculture, producing grain, fruit, and silk. Textile production becomes a major source of revenue, and the city's position along trade routes connecting inland Anatolia with coastal regions enhances its commercial importance. These resources supply the growing Ottoman administration and support military campaigns. As the new capital, Bursa serves as a center for rulers hold court in the city and oversee relations with neighboring beyliks. Officials coordinate taxation and organize military campaigns from this central location. Over time, administrative practices developed here influence the structure of the expanding state. The city becomes the model for later Ottoman governance of other urban centers. The conquest of Bursa also shifts the balance of power in western Anatolia. The Ottomans now control a significant city, while nearby Byzantine territories lose their economic and strategic foothold. This imbalance accelerates further Ottoman expansion. From Bursa, the principality can launch operations toward Nicaea, Nicomedia, and the Sea of Marmara. Control of these regions strengthens military mobility and expands access to trade networks. The city's integration into the Ottoman system remains peaceful compared to many medieval conquests. Contemporary accounts and later records indicate continuity in local crafts, trade, and religious communities. Christian populations continue to live in the city under Ottoman rule. This stability contributes to the success of the early Ottoman administrative approach, governing diverse populations while preserving essential economic activity. Over the next decades, Bursa grows in prominence. Public buildings appear, including mosques, baths, and educational institutions that reflect the evolving character of the Ottoman state. These developments are not the result of sudden transformation, but of slow, steady investment. The city becomes both a practical center of administration and a symbol of emerging statehood. By establishing Bursa as their first major capital, the Ottomans demonstrate their ability to absorb and govern complex urban societies. They transition from a frontier principality to a structured, expanding state with administrative capacity, economic resources, and political stability. From Base expansion continues. The capture of Bursa sets the stage for further conquests across Anatolia and into southeastern Europe. It provides the foundation for the next phase of Ottoman development, where regional influence becomes imperial ambition. In the middle of the 14th century, The direction of Ottoman expansion shifts from Anatolia towards southeastern Europe. The lands across the Dardanelles, Thrace, Macedonia, and the Balkan interior form a region marked by political fragmentation and shifting alliances. Byzantine control weakens further as internal conflicts continue. Local rulers compete for influence, and external pressures reshape borders. Into this landscape, the Ottomans move gradually, using a combination of military presence, diplomacy, and the opportunities created by regional instability. The first significant step into Europe follows the capture of Gallipoli in 1354. An earthquake damages the fortifications, and Ottoman forces take advantage of the moment to establish a permanent foothold on the European side of the strait. This location holds strategic importance. It connects Anatolia and Europe, allowing the Ottomans to transport troops and supplies efficiently across the waterway. Gallipoli becomes a forward base from which further operations can be launched. From this position, Ottoman forces expand cautiously but steadily. They do not rely solely on large campaigns. Instead, they use a method familiar from earlier expansions, securing small territories, building alliances, and establishing garrisons in key locations. Local rulers sometimes seek Ottoman support in their own disputes, offering territory or rights in exchange for military assistance. These agreements help the Ottomans enter regions that might otherwise resist them. Thrace becomes one of the first major targets. The region contains important cities and fertile plains that support large populations. Ottoman forces gradually extend their control over the countryside, reducing the ability of rival powers to maneuver effectively. Local resistance exists, but the combination of fragmented authority and shifting alliances limits coordinated opposition. By the 1360s, the Ottomans capture Adria, a significant urban center with administrative and military value. Its location allows control over key routes, leading deeper into the Balkans. Adrianople's incorporation into the Ottoman system strengthens their presence in Europe, and the city eventually becomes the new capital. From here, campaigns into the Balkans become more organized. The expansion into Europe introduces the Ottomans to new political and social environments. The Balkans contain diverse communities, including Greeks, Bulgarians, Serbs, Albanians, and Vlachs, each with their own structures of governance. The Ottomans adopt their administrative methods to these conditions. They maintain many local institutions while integrating them into the broader framework of Ottoman rule. This flexibility becomes one of the strengths of early expansion. Military campaigns continue throughout the region. Battles occur, but the larger pattern remains one of gradual integration. Fortresses fall through siege or negotiation. Rural areas come under Ottoman taxation and supervision. Local leaders, in some cases, retain their positions under new authority. These arrangements help stabilize newly acquired territories and reduce the need for constant military intervention. The Battle of Maritsa in 1371 reflects the shifting balance of power. A coalition of Balkan rulers attempts to halt Ottoman expansion, but the coalition lacks coordination. The Ottoman victory further strengthens their position and opens paths toward central Macedonia. This does not result in immediate control of the entire region, but it demonstrates the effectiveness of Ottoman forces and the difficulty local rulers face in resisting them. Population movement also influences expansion. Some communities relocate to avoid conflict, while others settle under Ottoman protection. In regions facing instability, the promise of relative security under Ottoman administration becomes appealing. These movements shape the demographic landscape of the Balkans and support the consolidation of Ottoman rule. Economic factors also contribute. The Balkans contain valuable agricultural lands, trade routes, and urban centers. Control over these resources strengthens the Ottoman state and supports further expansion. Markets continue to operate after conquest, and taxation systems integrate local economies into the Ottoman fiscal structure. The stability provided by consistent administration supports long-term development in some regions. By the late 14th century, the Ottomans have established a strong presence across much of southeastern Europe. Their influence extends into Bulgaria, Macedonia, and parts of Serbia. While resistance continues, the fragmented political environment allows the Ottomans to advance steadily. The principality that once occupied a narrow frontier zone now governs territories across 2 continents. This period also marks the emergence of the Ottomans as a major regional power. Their military strength administrative adaptability, and ability to form strategic alliances position them as one of the dominant forces in the Balkans. The fall of important cities, the success of diplomatic agreements, and the integration of new populations all contribute to their expanding influence. The establishment of Adrianople as a capital reflects this shift. The city becomes a center of administration, military planning, and cultural development. From here, the Ottomans coordinate their growing empire and prepare for further campaigns into Europe. The expansion into the Balkans forms the basis for future Ottoman conquests. It provides access to new resources, strengthens the state's administrative capacity, and positions the empire for major developments in the 15th century. The next significant chapter will unfold at the crossroads of two worlds: the final confrontation with the Byzantine Empire and the conquest of Constantinople. In the mid-15th century, Constantinople stands as the last significant stronghold of the Byzantine Empire. Once the political and cultural center of a vast realm, it now governs only a fraction of its former territories. The city remains formidable in appearance. Its triple land walls rise in long, continuous lines across the western side, and the Golden Horn forms a natural defensive barrier. Yet the empire behind these walls has grown small, and its resources limited. This creates the conditions in which the Ottomans, now a rising imperial power, prepare for one of the most consequential sieges in world history. By 1453, the Ottomans controlled the surrounding regions of Thrace, much of the Balkans, and extensive territories in Anatolia. Istanbul, then Constantinople, sits between these lands as a strategic and symbolic prize. Sultan Mehmed II, who comes to the throne with a clear interest in completing this long-delayed goal, organizes a campaign designed with precision. The siege is not a sudden impulse, but the result of decades of Ottoman expansion, logistical preparation, and administrative consolidation. Before the campaign begins, the Ottomans strengthen their position along the Bosphorus. A new fortress, Rumeli Sare, constructed on the strait's European side, allows them to control maritime access to the city. Combined with the existing fortress on the Asian shore, the Ottomans can monitor and restrict movement of ships. This step significantly reduces the city's ability to receive aid or supplies from external powers. The siege begins in April 1453. Ottoman forces assemble around the land walls, bringing with them artillery, infantry, and engineering units. One of the notable features of the siege is the use of large cannons capable of damaging masonry fortifications. These weapons reflect changes in military technology across Eurasia during this period. While the walls of Constantinople remain impressive, they are not designed for prolonged bombardment from gunpowder artillery. Inside the city, Byzantine defenders prepare as best they can. The population is limited, and the defending force consists of Byzantine troops, supported by a small number of foreign soldiers. They rely heavily on the strength of the walls and their knowledge of the terrain. Defensive operations concentrate on repairing damage, organizing patrols, and maintaining watch over vulnerable sections. The siege progresses in stages. Artillery targets key points along the land walls, weakening them gradually. Ottoman infantry conducts repeated assaults, testing different sectors of the defense. Naval engagements occur in the Golden Horn, where the Byzantines use a chain barrier to prevent enemy ships from entering. The Ottomans respond by transporting ships over land into the harbor, bypassing the barrier entirely. This maneuver reflects the adaptability of the Ottoman command structure and places pressure on the defenders from multiple directions. Throughout the siege, negotiations and attempts at support from European powers occur, but they do not bring substantial relief. Political divisions within Europe and the distance of potential allies limit effective intervention. Constantinople remains largely isolated, and the outcome increasingly depends on the endurance of its defenders versus the organization and resources of the Ottomans. In late May, a final large-scale assault is launched. Ottoman forces concentrate on weakened sections of the land walls. Infantry waves, supported by artillery fire, create breaches. After sustained pressure, defenders can no longer maintain their positions. Ottoman troops enter the city, and the siege comes to an end on May 29, 1453. The fall of Constantinople marks a pivotal moment in Ottoman history. It provides the Ottomans with a major capital, one that sits at the intersection of trade routes between Europe and Asia. The city offers administrative infrastructure, economic potential, and symbolic significance. Mehmed II begins reorganizing Constantinople immediately. He encourages population resettlement, rebuilds damaged structures, and establishes the city as the administrative and cultural center of the expanding empire. The transformation of the city includes the reorganization of religious and civic institutions. Christian churches continue to function under new arrangements. Markets reopen, and new buildings appear over time, reflecting the evolving character of the Ottoman capital. The city gradually becomes the center of a multi-ethnic, multilingual empire, hosting communities from across the Mediterranean, the Balkans, and Anatolia. The fall of Constantinople also alters the geopolitical landscape of the region. Remaining Byzantine territories lose their central authority. European states adjust their diplomatic and military strategies in response to Ottoman expansion. Trade routes shift, and regional powers reconsider their positions. The city's capture concludes more than a millennium of Byzantine history and initiates a new era in which the Ottomans emerge as a dominant imperial power. The conquest itself is not isolated, but part of a broader pattern of Ottoman growth in the 15th century. With Constantinople as their capital, the Ottomans develop more complex administrative structures, expand their military capabilities, and continue campaigns across southeastern Europe and the eastern Mediterranean. The capture of the city represents both the culmination of earlier efforts and the beginning of new transformations within the Ottoman state. After the conquest of Constantinople in 1453, the Ottoman Empire enters a phase defined not only by military expansion but by the development of a sophisticated administrative system. This system becomes one of the empire's most durable strengths. It allows the Ottomans to govern diverse populations across 3 continents, maintain long-term stability, and integrate newly conquered regions into a unified state. The effectiveness of this structure rests on clear hierarchies, well-defined responsibilities, and a legal framework adjusted to the realities of a multi-ethnic and multi-religious empire. The centerpiece of Ottoman administration is the Sultan, whose authority combines political, military, and legal leadership. Although the Sultan holds ultimate decision-making power, governance does not depend on a single individual. A structured bureaucracy supports the ruler, ensuring continuity even during transitions of power. This design allows the state to function steadily across generations. One of the most important administrative bodies is the Imperial Council. The Divan, it meets regularly to discuss state affairs, including taxation, legal disputes, provincial issues, and military campaigns. High-ranking officials, such as the Grand Vizier, provincial governors, and military commanders, participate in these meetings. The Grand Vizier emerges as the Sultan's chief deputy, overseeing daily governance and coordinating major administrative activities. This arrangement ensures that policy decisions reflect multiple perspectives and that responsibilities are distributed efficiently. The empire is divided into provinces, each governed by officials appointed from the center. These governors, supported by local administrations, enforce imperial laws, collect taxes, maintain order, and organize military resources. The provincial system allows the central government to manage distant regions effectively while adapting to local conditions. It also helps integrate new territories by establishing familiar structures of governance shortly after conquest. One notable feature of Ottoman administration is the Timrin system. Instead of paying cavalry soldiers directly from the treasury, the state grants them rights to collect taxes from designated lands. In return, they provide military service when required. This arrangement links military organization to land management, creating a structure that supports both defense and local administration. The system also reduces the financial burden on the central treasury while ensuring that rural areas remain productive. The legal system of the Ottoman Empire blends multiple traditions. Islamic law, known as Sharia, forms one foundation. It provides rules for personal matters, legal disputes, and aspects of governance. However, the Ottomans also incorporate Konon, a set of administrative laws issued by the Sultan. These laws address matters not covered by Sharia, such as taxation procedures, land regulations, and military obligations. The combination of Sharia and Konon creates a flexible legal framework capable of managing a large and diverse empire. Local communities maintain many of their own practices. Christian and Jewish populations, for example, continue to follow their own religious laws in personal and family matters. Each community has recognized leaders who manage internal affairs and communicate with Ottoman authorities. This system, known as the millet structure, allows different groups to preserve their identities while remaining under imperial rule. It also reduces tension by granting autonomy in areas essential to community life. Economic administration reflects the empire's need for stability and long-term planning. Taxation is organized systematically to ensure steady revenue. Agricultural taxes, market fees, customs duties, and urban levies contribute to the imperial treasury. Detailed records track assessments, land ownership, and population. These records help officials plan military campaigns, manage resources, and monitor economic activity across vast territories. Public works also form part of Ottoman administrative priorities. Roads, bridges, aqueducts, caravanserai, and public baths are built or maintained to support trade, travel, and urban life. These projects are financed through state funds or charitable foundations known as VAC. Wealthy individuals establish these foundations to support mosques, schools, hospitals, and other public institutions. The vakif system plays a significant role in social welfare and urban development throughout the empire. The growth of the administrative apparatus does not lead to uniformity. Instead, local variations remain important. Provincial officials adapt policies to regional conditions, balancing imperial directives with local customs and needs. This adaptability contributes to the longevity of Ottoman rule. When governing diverse populations, Greeks, Armenians, Arabs, Slavs, Kurds, and many others, flexibility becomes essential. The military also intersects with administration. Commanders responsible for frontier regions hold both military and civil authority. They oversee local defense, organize garrisons, and ensure compliance with imperial law. The connection between military and administrative structures strengthens state control in strategically important areas. Education and law play roles in shaping the administrative elite. Schools attached to mosques and public institutions train scholars, judges, and bureaucrats. Graduates enter the administrative system, bringing consistent training and shared knowledge of legal and administrative practices. This educational network supports the continuity of governance across provinces and generations. By the 16th century, the Ottoman administrative system reaches a high level of organization. It supports a large population, extensive territories, and a complex economy. Its stability allows the empire to expand while maintaining internal order. The administrative and legal structures developed during this period become defining features of Ottoman governance and remain influential for centuries. This system also helps the empire manage challenges that arise later: territorial disputes, economic shifts, and political tensions. Its strength lies in its combination of central authority, local autonomy, and clear institutional frameworks. These characteristics provide the foundation for the empire's long-term endurance. By the 15th century, the Ottoman Empire begins shaping a military institution that becomes one of the most distinctive features of its state structure. The Janissary Corps, what starts as a limited infantry force, develops into a central component of Ottoman military power. The Janissaries serve not only as soldiers, but also as an administrative and political presence within the empire. Their rise reflects broader trends in Ottoman governance organization, discipline, and the capacity to integrate diverse populations into a unified system. The origins of the Janissaries lie in the Devshirm, a system through which the state recruits boys from Christian communities in the Balkans and Anatolia. These recruits are selected at regular intervals and brought to Ottoman training centers. The selection process is systematic. It seeks individuals who can be trained in language, religion, military skills, and state discipline. The purpose is not immediate military service, but the long-term development of capable soldiers and administrators loyal to the Sultan. Once selected, the boys enter a period of training that lasts several years. They learn Turkish, study Islamic law and traditions, and undergo physical preparation. The training occurs in structured environments, often connected to palace institutions. This process creates a disciplined force with shared identity and loyalty. Unlike many medieval armies, which rely on feudal ties or temporary levies, the Janissaries form a standing infantry corps maintained directly by the state. As the empire expands, the Janissaries acquire increasing strategic importance. They participate in major campaigns across the Balkans and Anatolia, serving as reliable infantry in battles that require formation discipline and centralized command. Their training allows them to adapt to changing military technologies, including the growing use of firearms. They become one of the earliest military units in the region to integrate muskets efficiently into battlefield tactics. The Janissaries' role extends beyond combat. They guard the Sultan, protect key administrative centers, and serve in various capacities within the palace. Their presence reinforces state authority, especially in regions where maintaining order requires a consistent military force. Their integration into the imperial system ensures that they remain closely connected to the central government rather than to provincial elites. The organizational structure of the Janissaries supports their effectiveness. The corps is divided into units with defined responsibilities. Senior officers oversee training, discipline, logistics, and operations. Advancement within the corps is based on experience and competence, allowing skilled soldiers to rise through the ranks. The system emphasizes order and predictability, key factors in maintaining long-term stability. The Janissaries also hold a unique social position. They do not belong to traditional aristocratic families, nor are they tied to specific regions. Instead, they form a distinct group within Ottoman society. Their identity is shaped by the state, and their opportunities for advancement come through service. This structure allows the empire to develop a loyal and professional military class that supports central authority. As the empire reaches its height in the 16th century, the Janissaries participate in major campaigns under sultans such as Mehmed II, Selim I, and Suleiman the Magnificent. They play significant roles in the conquest of Constantinople, the expansion into the Middle East, and campaigns in Central Europe. Their discipline and training contribute to Ottoman success on multiple fronts. The Janissaries' rise influences administrative practices as well. Some members enter bureaucratic positions after completing military service. They become scribes, financial officers, and court officials. Their training and loyalty make them valuable administrators in a complex and expanding empire. This movement between military and civil roles strengthens the connection between the army and state institutions. Religious and educational institutions also interact with the Janissaries. Many are trained in palace schools, where they learn not only military skills but also literature, law, and administration. These schools produce individuals capable of serving in various parts of the empire. The integration of military and educational systems reflects the Ottomans' broader approach to state building, using structured training to produce capable and loyal personnel. Despite their success, the rise of the Janissaries creates long-term challenges. Their increasing influence becomes a significant factor in future political developments. However, during the classical period of the empire, their organization and discipline strengthened Ottoman military capacity and support administrative cohesion. The Janissary Corps exemplifies the Ottoman ability to combine diverse traditions, military innovation, administrative structure, and social integration into a functioning institution. Their rise supports the empire's expansion and contributes to its stability during periods of rapid growth. By the early 16th century, the Ottoman Empire reaches a period of exceptional expansion and consolidation under the rule of Sultan Suleiman Kanon As the Magnificent. His reign, which lasts from 1520 to 1566, represents a high point in Ottoman political organization, military power, cultural development, and legal reform. The empire stretches across vast territories, connecting regions from Central Europe to the Arabian Peninsula. The administrative system operates with notable stability, and the military demonstrates consistent effectiveness across multiple fronts. The territorial extent of the empire grows significantly during Suleiman's reign. In Europe, Ottoman forces moved deeper into the Balkans and Central Europe, capturing key cities and reshaping regional power dynamics. The Uğurlu Battle of Mohacs results in the defeat of the Hungarian kingdom, opening the path to further Ottoman influence in that region. Vienna becomes the focus of a major campaign in 1529, reflecting the empire's ability to project power far beyond its original frontiers. Although the siege does not succeed, it demonstrates the scope of Ottoman military operations during this period. In the Middle East, Ottoman campaigns incorporate important territories, including Syria, Egypt, and parts of the Arabian Peninsula regions, with long-established administrative traditions and economic significance. The incorporation of these lands connects the Ottoman Empire to major trade networks and strengthens its position in the eastern Mediterranean. It also places the holy cities of Mecca and Medina under Ottoman protection, adding religious significance to the empire's responsibilities. The military achievements of this period rely on organized structures developed over previous centuries. The Janissary Corps provides disciplined infantry capable of operating effectively with firearms, while the Sipahi cavalry supports campaigns across different terrains. Logistics, supply lines, and transport systems function at a high level, allowing large armies to operate efficiently across distant regions. The use of artillery continues to evolve, contributing to Ottoman success in both field battles and sieges. Administrative developments. Parallel military achievements. The empire's provincial system expands to accommodate new territories, each governed by officials responsible for taxation, law enforcement, and local stability. Detailed land surveys record agricultural production, population distribution, and fiscal obligations. These surveys enable consistent taxation and support long-term planning. The administrative structure that emerges during Suleiman's reign becomes a model for governance across the empire for generations. One of Suleiman's most enduring contributions is his reorganization of the legal system. He issues a series of legal codes that clarify taxation, land rights, and administrative procedures. While Islamic law remains an essential foundation, these regulations, often referred to as Conundres, practical matters of governance. They create consistency across diverse provinces and ensure that laws can be applied predictably. The legal reforms of this period contribute significantly to the stability and cohesion of the empire. Urban development also. Istanbul grows rapidly, supported by public works programs, new mosques, educational institutions, and marketplaces. The construction of large architectural complexes reflects both religious life and administrative needs. The architect, Mimar Sinan, who serves as the chief imperial architect during much of Suleiman's reign, designs buildings that become defining landmarks of Ottoman urban culture. These structures include mosques, bridges, caravanserais, and public baths. Their scale and precision reflect the organization and resources of the empire at its height. Cultural life during this period benefits from the empire's geographic languages, artistic traditions, and scholarly networks from many regions interact within Ottoman cities. Manuscript production increases, legal scholarship expands, and educational institutions attract students from across the empire. The state supports scholars, poets, and administrators who contribute to intellectual and cultural life. This activity forms part of a broader pattern of consolidation, where stability encourages economic and artistic development. Economic conditions during this period are shaped by control of major trade routes. Ottoman territories span regions that connect to the Mediterranean, the Red Sea, the Persian Gulf, and the interior of the Balkans. These connections support the movement of goods, such as textiles, spices, metalwork, and grain. Taxation of trade contributes to state revenue, while urban centers benefit from increased commercial activity. Agricultural production in the provinces supports both local populations and military campaigns. Despite these strengths, challenges begin to appear. The empire's size requires constant administrative coordination. Communication across vast distances depends on organized courier systems, and maintaining order in remote regions requires capable leadership. External pressures also remain, including conflicts with European powers, Persia, and local rulers in frontier zones. While these challenges do not significantly weaken the empire during Suleiman's reign, they foreshadow issues that emerge more clearly in later centuries. Nevertheless, Suleiman's period represents a moment when military, administrative, legal, and cultural developments align effectively. The empire reaches a level of organization that allows it to govern diverse populations while maintaining regional stability. The structures created during this era contribute to the empire's ability to endure long after territorial expansion slows. Under the Ottomans demonstrate the capacity to integrate new territories, adapt administrative practices, and maintain a functioning multi-ethnic state. The empire's institutions remain strong enough to support future generations, even as economic and political pressures gradually reshape the balance of power. As the Ottoman Empire expands across Europe, Asia, and North Africa, it gains control of some of the most important trade routes of the early modern world. These routes connect major commercial centers, agricultural regions, and maritime corridors. The empire's geographic position allows it to shape economic activity between the Mediterranean, the Middle East, Eastern Europe, and parts of Central Asia. Trade becomes a key factor in maintaining administrative stability, supporting military operations, and sustaining urban life. The empire's economic system relies on a combination of agricultural production, taxation, and regulated commerce. Farmlands across Anatolia, the Balkans, Syria, Egypt, and Mesopotamia produce grain, cotton, olives, fruits, and a wide range of local crops. These goods supply both local populations and markets in larger urban centers. Agricultural surpluses support the army, fund administrative budgets, and contribute to long-distance trade through ports and caravan routes. Istanbul, the imperial capital, becomes one of the largest commercial hubs of the region. Its position on the Bosporus gives it access to two major bodies of water, Mediterranean and the Black Sea. Goods from Eastern Europe, Russia, and the Caucasus arrive through the Black Sea, while goods from the Levant, Egypt, and North Africa travel through the Eastern Mediterranean. Merchants from many regions operate in the city, creating a diverse commercial environment. The empire's control of major ports strengthens its economic network. Alexandria, Cairo, Aleppo Thessaloniki, Izmir, and Tripoli all serve as regional marketplaces. These cities host warehouses, customs stations, and administrative offices that regulate trade. Goods arriving from distant regions must pass through these centers before traveling further, allowing the state to collect customs duties and maintain oversight. Caravan routes also remain essential. The interior of the empire is connected through an extensive system of roads, bridges, and caravanserais, roadside inns, designed for merchants and travelers. These structures allow caravans to move goods safely across long distances. They also create a predictable infrastructure that supports both commerce and communication. Items such as textiles, spices, metalwork, and grains travel along these routes, linking inland regions to coastal markets. Egypt holds particular economic importance. Its fertile Nile Valley produces significant grain surpluses, which support both local populations and distant provinces. As part of the Ottoman Empire, Egypt contributes to food security across the region. Grain shipments move from Alexandria to Istanbul and other centers, supporting urban populations and enabling Ottoman forces to operate effectively during campaigns. The Red Sea also becomes an important economic corridor. Ottoman control of the hedges and the ports along the Red Sea connects the empire to trade with the Arabian Peninsula, East Africa, and the Indian Ocean. Goods, such as spices, textiles, and luxury items, enter Ottoman markets from these regions. While the rise of Portuguese maritime trade around Africa reduces some traffic through the Red Sea, overland and regional maritime routes continue to play significant roles in the empire's economy. Taxation on trade provides steady revenue. Customs duties collected at ports and border crossings support administrative and military expenses. Markets operate under regulations that ensure fair measurements, standardized weights, and controlled pricing for essential goods. Market inspectors monitor trade practices to prevent fraud and maintain public trust. These systems create predictability and support economic stability. Urban life depends heavily on these economic networks. Cities grow around marketplaces, workshops, and transport hubs. Artisans produce textiles, metal goods, ceramics, and tools items that circulate both locally and internationally. Guilds regulate production, maintain quality standards, and organize training for apprentices. These organizations form an essential part of urban economic and social life. As the empire expands, regional economic patterns adapt to new political boundaries. Some areas specialize in agriculture, others in crafts or trade. The combination of natural resources, strategic location, and administrative organization determines the economic character of each province. This diversity strengthens the overall economic structure of the empire, allowing it to function even when one region faces difficulties. However, global changes in trade also affect the Ottoman economy. The rise of European maritime powers in the 16th and 17th centuries alters the flow of long-distance commerce. New sea routes connecting Europe to Asia reduce the strategic importance of some land routes. While the Ottoman Empire continues to benefit from internal trade and regional commerce, it gradually becomes less central to global trade networks. These shifts do not cause immediate decline, but they influence economic development over time. Despite these challenges, the empire maintains a strong commercial system well into the early modern period. Its administrative structures, infrastructure, and taxation systems support economic activity across large distances. The ability to manage diverse markets contributes to the longevity of Ottoman rule. Economic networks also play a role in maintaining social stability. Markets connect rural and urban populations. Trade creates opportunities for mobility and supports public institutions funded through charitable foundations. These foundations help maintain schools, hospitals, mosques, and public works. They also support merchants and artisans, integrating economic activity with social welfare. By the time the empire reaches its territorial height, its economic network reflects centuries of development. It is shaped by geography, state organization, and regional diversity. The system does not remain static. It adapts to new conditions and challenges. But its core features trade routes, agricultural production, regulated markets, and administrative oversight remain central to the empire's endurance. By the late 16th and early 17th centuries, the Ottoman military faces new challenges shaped by technological change, shifting regional dynamics, and the increasing complexity of warfare across Europe and the Middle East. The empire, which once expanded rapidly through coordinated infantry, cavalry, and artillery forces, now confronts opponents with improved firearms, fortified positions, and more centralized military systems. These developments do not lead to immediate decline, but they require adjustments that place sustained pressure on Ottoman institutions. One of the most significant changes in warfare is the widespread adoption of firearms. While the Ottomans had integrated gunpowder weapons earlier than many neighboring states, European armies increasingly rely on muskets and field artillery organized into standardized units. These armies adopt new battlefield formations designed specifically for gunpowder combat, allowing them to deliver concentrated fire and maintain discipline under pressure. The Ottoman military, though experienced with firearms, must adapt to these new tactics. Fortification technology also evolves. European states construct modern bastion fortresses capable of withstanding artillery bombardment. These star-shaped defenses with angled walls reduce the effectiveness of siege cannons. Capturing such fortifications requires prolonged, costly campaigns and specialized engineering corps. Ottoman forces, accustomed to earlier forms of siege warfare, must now invest substantially more resources and time to achieve similar results. Logistics become increasingly important. Larger armies require steady supplies of food, ammunition, and equipment. The Ottomans possess experience in managing long-distance campaigns, but the scale of warfare in Europe grows rapidly. Maintaining supply lines across the Balkans and ensuring consistent support for frontier garrisons becomes a complex, administrative task. Environmental factors, mountain passes, river crossings, winter conditions further influence the pace of campaigns. Rival powers also undergo administrative and military transformations. The Habsburgs centralize their authority in Central Europe. The Safavids in Persia improve their cavalry and administrative structures. Russia expands southward, creating new geopolitical pressures along the Black Sea frontier. These states develop standing armies, supported by centralized taxation and increasingly professional officer corps. Their growth reshapes regional balances, requiring the Ottomans to defend multiple borders simultaneously. The Janissaries, once a highly disciplined infantry force, begin to change as well. Over time, the recruitment process shifts, and membership becomes more hereditary. This change alters the corps' character. While still influential, the Janissaries become less flexible. Resistance to organizational reform grows, complicating efforts to modernize training and equipment. Their political influence increases, but their ability to adapt to new forms of warfare decreases. Naval warfare becomes another area of challenge. Control of the eastern Mediterranean remains a key objective, but European maritime powers, particularly Spain, Venice, and later the Dutch and English, expand their naval capabilities. Advances in ship design, navigation, and gunnery shift the balance at sea. The Ottoman fleet remains active, but matching the scale and innovation of European navies becomes increasingly difficult. Economic pressures intersect with military challenges. Sustaining large armies and building modern fortifications require significant financial resources. The empire's tax system, land revenues, and trade networks support military expenditures. But the increasing cost of warfare strains budgets. Inflation, changes in global trade, and local economic difficulties contribute to these challenges. While the state continues to function, maintaining military readiness requires careful allocation of resources. Despite these difficulties, the Ottomans continue to conduct major campaigns. They defend territories in the Balkans, fight prolonged conflicts with Persia, and maintain influence in the eastern Mediterranean. Battles such as those at Kotain and campaigns in Iraq demonstrate that the Ottoman military remains capable of coordinated operations. However, the increasing complexity of warfare requires ongoing adaptation, and the pace of change across Eurasia challenges traditional military structures. Another factor shaping military developments is the shift in political authority within the empire. Provincial leaders, known as Alan, gain influence in some regions, particularly during periods of weak central control. Their involvement in military logistics, recruitment, and local defense shapes the structure of regional power. While they support imperial campaigns, their growing autonomy reflects changing dynamics between the center and provinces. Technological adaptation continues, but unevenly. Some Ottoman forces integrate new firearms and training methods, while others rely on older systems. The need for standardized equipment and updated tactics grows, but implementing reforms across vast territories proves difficult. Communication challenges and local resistance further complicate modernization efforts. The empire's military challenges do not result from a single cause, but from a combination of technological change, economic pressures, administrative restructuring, and external competition. These challenges accumulate gradually. The Ottoman military continues to fight effectively in many campaigns, yet the strategic environment becomes more demanding with each decade. By the 17th century, the balance between expansion and defense begins to shift. The empire focuses increasingly on maintaining existing territories rather than acquiring new ones. The shift does not signify collapse, but marks a new phase of imperial strategy shaped by global changes in warfare and administration. As the Ottoman Empire enters the 17th century, internal dynamics begin to shift in ways that gradually reshape the balance between central authority and provincial power. While the imperial administration remains functional and the empire continues to govern a vast and diverse population, the distribution of influence within the state becomes more complex. Local leaders, military groups, and administrative officials each play roles in shaping the direction of governance, creating a pattern of internal rivalries and increasing regional autonomy. One significant development is the growing influence of provincial notables, known as elite. These individuals emerge in various regions as landholders, tax collectors, military organizers, or local administrators. Their authority does not originate from hereditary titles or formal aristocratic rank. Instead, it arises from local economic resources, patronage networks, and the practical need to maintain order and collect revenue in distant provinces. Over time, the Ayan become essential intermediaries between the central government and regional populations. The central administration relies on these local leaders for tasks such as raising troops, managing supplies, collecting taxes, and stabilizing rural areas. This reliance provides the Ayan with increased influence, while they continue to operate within the framework of imperial authority. Their power sometimes grows to the point where provincial decisions depend more on local leadership than on direct orders from the capital. The relationship remains cooperative, but it reflects a shift toward shared governance, shaped by regional conditions. Another factor influencing internal dynamics is the changing role of the Janissaries. BT's period, the Janissary corps hold significant political influence in Istanbul and other major cities. Members participate in administrative matters, influence appointments, and express opinions on fiscal or military reforms. Their presence ensures continuity, but their resistance to certain changes complicates efforts to modernize the army. Their connection with urban guilds and marketplaces further embeds them in local political life. Fiscal pressures also shape internal rivalries. As the cost of warfare increases and revenue sources shift, the state introduces new tax farming practices. These practices involve granting individuals the right to collect certain taxes in exchange for payments to the central treasury. While effective in generating immediate revenue, tax farming strengthens the position of regional elites who manage these rights. Some tax farmers develop long-term control over specific areas, blending economic and administrative authority. The distribution of military responsibility also changes. In earlier centuries, the timur system linked cavalry service to land grants, ensuring a steady supply of soldiers. As the nature of warfare evolves, the usefulness of this system declines. Firearms, artillery, and fortified engagements require different military structures. The decline of the timur system reduces the central government's direct military presence in rural areas and increases the need for locally raised troops. This development further strengthens provincial leaders who organize such forces. Urban centers experience their own forms of rivalry. Guilds, religious institutions, merchants, and administrative officials each participate in civic life. Negotiating interests among these groups becomes part of the political landscape. Markets, courts, and charitable foundations remain stable. But the distribution of influence within cities shifts as economic conditions change. The complexity of urban society reflects the broader complexity of the empire itself. In some regions, tribal groups maintain significant autonomy in parts of Arabia, Kurdistan, and the North African provinces. Local leaders exercise substantial control over internal affairs. These areas remain within the Ottoman framework but operate with considerable independence. The central government recognizes the importance of cooperation with tribal authorities to maintain stability and ensure loyalty. Despite these developments, the empire does not become fragmented. The administrative and legal systems established in earlier centuries continue to function. The Sultanate remains the recognized source of legitimacy. Imperial decrees, legal codes, and tax regulations still guide governance. Trade routes remain active, and urban centers continue to serve as administrative and economic hubs. Provincial leaders, though influential, generally operate within the boundaries of imperial authority. Communication between the center and provinces plays an important role. Couriers, messengers, and official correspondents travel along established routes, linking distant regions to the capital. Reports on population, taxation, and local conditions help the central administration monitor the empire. While delays and regional variations occur, the overall system remains coherent. Local autonomy does not arise from deliberate decentralization, but from practical adjustments to administrative needs. The empire's size and diversity make flexible governance essential. In regions with strong economic activity or complex social structures, local leaders contribute significantly to maintaining order. In areas requiring military coordination, provincial commanders respond to local threats more quickly than distant officials could. The interaction between central authority and regional autonomy becomes one of the defining features of Ottoman governance in this period. It represents a balance between continuity and change, shaped by economic conditions, military requirements, and social structures. While internal rivalries can create tensions, they also reveal the adaptability of the Ottoman system, which allows the empire to function across vast territories. By the late 17th century, this balance begins to face new pressures. European powers strengthened their militaries and economic systems. Global trade shifts. Internal reforms become more urgent. The empire continues to operate, but the increasing complexity of internal dynamics sets the stage for major transformations in the following centuries. By the 17th century, the Ottoman Empire confronts a series of economic changes shaped by both internal conditions and global developments. These changes do not produce an immediate crisis, but they gradually alter the balance between revenue, expenditure, and administrative capacity. The empire's economic system, which once benefited from control of major trade routes and steady agricultural production, now adjusts to shifts in global commerce, changes in fiscal practices, and increasing military costs. One of the most significant factors is the transformation of global trade networks. The rise of European maritime powers, Portugal, Spain, the Dutch Republic, England, and France reshapes the flow of goods between Asia, Africa, and Europe. Sea routes around Africa, developed in the late 15th and 16th centuries, reduced the importance of traditional land routes across the Middle East. Spices, textiles, and other luxury goods increasingly travel by ocean rather than by caravan through Ottoman territories. This shift does not eliminate Ottoman trade, but it reduces the state's ability to benefit from customs revenue along overland routes. At the same time, European commercial activity expands in the Mediterranean. Foreign merchants establish privileges, known as capitulate, which allow them to trade under favorable conditions within the empire. These agreements, originally intended to encourage commerce, gradually shift economic advantage toward European traders. While Ottoman merchants remain active in regional markets, the growing presence of foreign competitors influences local economies and reduces the fiscal benefits that once came from controlling trade flows. Internal economic pressures also increase. The empire's population grows in many areas, raising demand for food, materials, and administrative resources. Agricultural production continues, but environmental factors, regional conflicts, and shifting settlement patterns affect yields in some provinces. In certain regions, tax collection becomes less consistent as local authorities gain more influence, or as rural populations face economic difficulties. Inflation becomes a noticeable issue. The influx of silver into Europe from the Americas contributes to rising prices across the Mediterranean world. The Ottoman economy, connected to global trade, experiences similar effects. As prices rise, state revenues do not always increase at the same pace. Soldiers, officials, and urban populations feel the impact, creating pressure for fiscal adjustments. To address financial needs, the state expands its use of tax farming. Under this system, individuals pay the government for the right to collect specific taxes, while tax farming generates immediate revenue for the treasury. It also shifts financial power toward those who hold tax farming contracts. In many provinces, these individuals become influential local figures with economic authority. Their role strengthens regional autonomy and complicates efforts to standardize taxation. Spending on the military increases significantly. Campaigns in Europe, Persia, and North Africa require sustained funding for troops, equipment, fortifications, and logistics. Changes in warfare, especially the need for firearms, gunpowder, and modern fortifications, raise costs further. Maintaining garrisons along long frontiers becomes a complex and expensive undertaking. Even when campaigns maintain territorial stability, they place continuous strain on state finances. Urban economies also undergo transformation. Cities such as Istanbul, Cairo, Aleppo, and Damascus remain centers of production, trade, and administration. Workshops produce textiles, leather goods, metalwork, and other items essential to local and regional markets. But competition from European manufactured goods increases over time, particularly in textiles. While Ottoman guilds maintain standards and train apprentices, they face challenges adapting to new technologies and commercial practices emerging in Europe. Charitable foundations, or vakif, continue to play an important role in economic life. They support schools, hospitals, mosques, bridges, and markets. These foundations manage property and collect rents, forming a significant part of urban economies. While they contribute to social welfare, their assets are often exempt from taxation, reducing potential revenue for the central government. The balance between public benefit and fiscal needs becomes more complex. Despite these challenges, the Ottoman economy remains functional. Agricultural production supports millions of people. Trade networks continue to operate across the Balkans, Anatolia, the Middle East, and North Africa. Caravans move goods between cities, and ports remain active with regional commerce. The empire adapts to new conditions, but the cumulative pressures slowly reshape its economic foundations. The central administration attempts reforms. Officials revise tax practices, reorganize provincial finances, and monitor market regulations. Some efforts achieve short-term stability, but long-term solutions prove difficult due to the scale of the empire and the diversity of its economic conditions. The complexity of governing such a large territory requires continuous adjustment. By the 18th century, the combined effects of global trade shifts, inflation, Rising military costs and changes in local economies contribute to a new economic environment. The empire remains intact, and many regions continue to function effectively, but the economic balance that supported earlier expansion no longer exists in the same form. The shift does not create immediate decline, but marks a long-term transformation in how the empire sustains itself. The Janissaries, once a symbol of Ottoman military discipline and state organization, entered a period of gradual transformation beginning in the 17th century. The changes do not occur suddenly. Instead, they unfold over several generations as the corps adapts to new social, political, and economic conditions. What began as a carefully trained infantry force loyal directly to the Sultan becomes an institution with expanding privileges, increasing autonomy, and growing involvement in urban life. These developments influence both military effectiveness and internal stability. The original strength of the Janissaries lies in their training and organization. Recruited through the Devshirme system, they undergo years of preparation in language, religious instruction, physical training, and military skills. Their identity forms through shared discipline and service. This structure creates a professional standing army at a time when many states rely on temporary levies or feudal forces. Over time, however, the recruitment process begins to change. The Devshirme system becomes less strictly enforced, and entry into the corps becomes accessible to individuals not originally intended for recruitment. Some receive admission through family connections or purchase of positions. Membership gradually becomes hereditary in practice, even if not formally recognized as such. This shift alters the character of the corps, reducing the emphasis on disciplined training and increasing its integration into broader urban society. The Janissaries' growing presence in cities affects their institutional role. Many members engage in trades or crafts, joining guilds, and participating in commercial activities. While this contributes to urban economies, it also diverts attention from military duties. Their involvement in local life provides them with additional sources of income and influence, strengthening their position within cities like Istanbul, Idorn, and Thessaloniki. As their social presence grows, so does their political influence. The Janissaries participate more actively in matters of state, expressing opinions on appointments, reforms, and fiscal policies. In moments of political instability, they play roles in palace events, supporting or opposing certain officials. This involvement reflects their expanded authority but complicates efforts to modernize the military. Attempts to reform training or introduce new equipment face resistance from those who fear losing established privileges. Technological changes in warfare further highlight the challenges facing the corps. Firearms become more advanced, and European armies develop standardized training methods, specialized engineering units, and coordinated battlefield tactics. While some Janissary units adopt new practices, reform occurs unevenly. Traditional methods persist alongside newer techniques, limiting the corps' ability to respond to evolving military demands. The increasing diversity within the corps also influences cohesion. Earlier generations of Janissaries share similar backgrounds through the Devshirme system. Later members come from more varied origins, including families already associated with the corps. This diversity does not diminish their loyalty to the empire but affects the uniformity of training and discipline that once distinguished the Janissaries. Economic conditions also shape the corps' development. Inflation, rising military expenses, and the need for additional revenue lead to changes in pay and provisioning. Janissaries seek supplementary income through crafts, trade, or unofficial payments. While these practices support individual members, they contribute to the evolution of the corps into a powerful social and economic group whose interests extend beyond military service. The state recognizes the need for reform. Efforts to modernize the army occur periodically, especially during periods of military difficulty. Some sultans introduce new training methods or attempt to reorganize the corps. These reforms often face resistance, either because they threaten established practices or because the Janissaries hold enough influence to oppose significant structural changes. As a result, improvements occur slowly and sometimes only temporarily. Despite these challenges, the Janissaries continue to participate in military campaigns throughout the 17th and 18th centuries. They serve in battles across Europe and the Middle East, support garrisons, and maintain a presence in strategic cities. Their experience and familiarity with the empire's administrative system remain valuable. However, The level of discipline and training varies, and their capacity to adapt declines compared to earlier centuries. The broader context of the empire influences the core's development as well. Changes in provincial administration, economic strains, and shifting global dynamics shape the environment in which the Janissaries operate. Their decline reflects not only internal issues but also the challenges of maintaining a traditional military institution in a rapidly changing world. The Janissaries remain an integral part of Ottoman society until the early 19th century, when reforms become more urgent. Their eventual abolition will mark one of the most decisive moments in Ottoman modernization efforts. But during the period examined here, the course illustrates the complexities of balancing tradition with the demands of a changing political and military landscape. By the early 19th century, the Ottoman Empire governs a large and diverse population across Europe, Asia, and North Africa. This diversity has long been a defining feature of the empire, sustained through flexible administrative structures and systems that allow local autonomy under imperial rule. However, global political and intellectual trends begin to reshape regional identities. Nationalist movements emerge in several Ottoman provinces, reflecting new ideas about political community, sovereignty, and cultural identity. These movements gradually influence territorial boundaries and redefine the relationship between central authority and provincial populations. The origins of nationalism in the Ottoman context are connected to broader European developments. Across the continent, movements promoting linguistic unity, cultural heritage, and political independence gain momentum. Ideas circulate through printed materials, education, and trade networks. Ottoman provinces with close connections to Europe experience these changes. First, local intellectuals, merchants, and clergy engage with new concepts of nationhood, adapting them to regional histories and social structures. One of the earliest and most significant nationalist uprisings occurs in Greece. The Greek War of Independence, beginning in 1821, reflects both local aspirations and international support. Cultural and religious institutions contribute to the formation of a shared identity, while external powers Britain, France, and Russia play roles in shaping the conflict's outcome. The eventual establishment of an independent Greek state marks a major territorial loss for the Ottoman Empire and signals a new era in regional politics. Other regions experience similar movements. In Serbia, local leaders demonstrate increasing autonomy in the late 18th and early 19th centuries. Uprisings lead to negotiations and the gradual recognition of Serbian sovereignty. These developments take place within a complex environment involving local grievances, regional interests, and shifting Ottoman policies. The emergence of Serbian autonomy influences neighboring regions and contributes to broader patterns of political change in the Balkans. In Bulgaria, the 19th century sees the growth of cultural and educational movements that promote the use of the Bulgarian language and the development of national institutions. These movements precede political uprisings and eventually contribute to demands for greater autonomy. The establishment of a Bulgarian exarchate in 1870, an independent ecclesiastical structure, reflects the significance of religious institutions in shaping national identity. Later conflicts and international agreements lead to the creation of a Bulgarian principality. Romania, which includes the principalities of Wallachia and Moldavia, also experiences political changes influenced by both internal developments and external pressures. Local elites engage in administrative reform, and international negotiations gradually redefine the status of the region. The formal unification of these principalities contributes to the emergence of a Romanian national identity and furthers the process of territorial reorganization. In southeastern Europe, nationalist movements are not limited to the Balkans. In the Arab provinces, intellectuals and reformers promote cultural revival and literary development. While these movements do not seek immediate separation from the empire, they contribute to growing regional awareness. Local leaders discuss administrative reform, language, and communal identity within the framework of a modernizing world. These developments influence political debates in the late Ottoman period. The emergence of nationalism interacts with economic and administrative conditions. Fiscal pressures, military challenges, and regional tensions create environments in which local populations reconsider their relationship with imperial authority. While the Ottoman state implements reforms through the Tanzimat period addressing legal equality, administrative modernization, and fiscal restructuring, these reforms do not always resolve local concerns. In some regions, they strengthen the desire for autonomy by emphasizing the modern concepts of rights and governance. International diplomacy plays a significant role in shaping outcomes. European powers often intervene in Ottoman affairs, sometimes supporting nationalist movements for strategic purposes. Treaties, negotiations, and military actions influence territorial boundaries and political arrangements. The Congress of Berlin in 1878 marks a major moment in this process, as several Balkan states gain recognition or expanded autonomy. These diplomatic developments reshaping southeastern Europe reflect both local movements and wider geopolitical interests. Despite territorial losses, the Ottoman Empire continues to function. Administrative reforms aim to strengthen central authority and modernize institutions. Railways, telegraph lines, and new schools appear across the empire, but the loss of certain territories and the rise of new national states illustrate the significant impact of nationalist movements. The structure of the empire becomes more focused on its remaining Anatolian and Middle Eastern provinces, altering the demographic and political composition of the state. The emergence of nationalism marks a shift from a world organized through imperial structures to one shaped increasingly by nation-states. For centuries, the Ottoman system had managed diversity through flexible governance. In the 19th century, however, the rise of national identities presents challenges that differ fundamentally from previous forms of provincial autonomy. The resulting territorial changes reshaped the political landscape of southeastern Europe and the eastern Mediterranean. At the beginning of the 20th century, the Ottoman Empire faces a combination of internal and external pressures that differ in scale and intensity from those of previous centuries. While the state continues to function and reforms continue to shape its institutions, the geopolitical environment becomes increasingly demanding. European powers dominate global politics, economic systems expand rapidly beyond imperial frameworks, and new national identities emerge in regions once governed through flexible Ottoman structures. These conditions form the background against which the empire enters the First World War. The decision to join the conflict on the side of the Central Powers Germany and Austro-Hungary occurs. In a context of complex diplomacy, the Ottoman leadership seeks alliances that might strengthen the empire's strategic position and provide military support for territorial defense. German military advisors already play a role in Ottoman reform efforts, and cooperation deepens as the prospect of war approaches. When hostilities begin, the empire finds itself on the front lines of several distinct and demanding campaigns. One major theater of war occurs in the Caucasus, where Ottoman forces confront the Russian Empire. The harsh climate, challenging terrain, and logistical difficulties place significant strain on military operations. Despite moments of resistance, the campaigns result in substantial hardship for both soldiers and civilian populations. Supply shortages and extreme winter conditions influence the outcomes of key battles, reflecting the broader logistical challenges the empire faces. In the Middle Eastern provinces, the war introduces new dynamics. The Ottoman army campaigns in Mesopotamia, the Arabian Peninsula, and the Sinai region. British forces advance from India and Egypt, capturing strategic cities and reshaping regional control. The long-established administrative structures in these provinces come under pressure as front lines shift and local groups engage with emerging political opportunities. Communication and supply lines become increasingly difficult to maintain across vast distances. The Gallipoli campaign in 1915 becomes one of the most widely recognized military engagements involving the Ottoman Empire during the war. Allied forces attempt to capture the Dardanelles and secure a route to the Black Sea. Ottoman defenders, operating under challenging conditions, successfully hold their positions, preventing an Allied breakthrough. The campaign results in heavy casualties on both sides, but demonstrates the capacity of Ottoman troops to defend strategically important territory. While military operations continue, internal conditions grow increasingly strained. The demands of a global conflict place pressure on the economy, transportation systems, and administrative institutions. Shortages of food, materials, and labor affect both urban and rural populations. The movement of troops and the disruption of trade routes alter local economies. These pressures compound the difficulties already present in the early 20th century. One of the most consequential developments during the war is the involvement of local groups in emerging political movements. In the Arabian Peninsula, certain tribal and political leaders engage in uprisings that challenge Ottoman authority. These movements reflect both local aspirations and the influence of global wartime strategies. Their outcomes reshape the political landscape of the region, contributing to the formation of new states after the war. As the conflict progresses, the Central Powers face increasing military setbacks. When Germany and Austria-Hungary collapse in 1918, the Ottoman Empire finds itself unable to continue the war. The Armistice of Mudros brings hostilities to an end, but the terms of the agreement allow Allied forces to occupy strategic Ottoman territories. The empire becomes subject to significant political restructuring, and its remaining authority diminishes rapidly. In 1920, the Treaty of Sevres outlines extensive territorial losses and places large regions under international administration. Although the treaty is not fully implemented, it reflects the extent to which the empire's territorial integrity has been compromised. At the same time, a political movement emerges in Anatolia, centered around the leadership of Mustafa Kemal. This movement organizes resistance to occupation and seeks to establish new political institutions based on territorial sovereignty. The Turkish War of Independence leads to significant changes. By 1923, negotiations culminate in the Treaty of Lausanne, which recognizes the boundaries of a new Turkish state. With the establishment of the Republic of Turkey, the Ottoman Sultanate comes to an end. The administrative structures, political institutions, and territorial framework that defined the empire for more than 6 centuries formally dissolve. The dissolution of the Ottoman Empire results from multiple long-term factors. Shifts in global trade, changes in military technology, the rise of nationalist movements, fiscal pressures, and administrative challenges. Each play roles in reshaping the empire. The First World War accelerates these processes by imposing demands that exceed the capacity of the state. While the empire endures many earlier challenges through adaptation and reform, the combined pressures of global conflict and internal transformation ultimately bring the imperial system to a close. Across more than 6 centuries, the Ottoman Empire develops from a small frontier principality into a major imperial power governing territories in Europe, Asia, and North Africa. Its longevity rests on a combination of administrative structure, military organization, and economic adaptability. Early expansion is supported by disciplined forces and flexible governance. The capture of cities such as Bursa and Constantinople provides administrative centers that strengthen state authority and shape imperial identity. Throughout its history, the empire manages a diverse population through systems that accommodate regional differences while maintaining central oversight. The Timur system, the Janissary Corps, provincial administration, and legal structures create a framework capable of sustaining large territories. Trade routes, agricultural production, and urban markets contribute to economic stability. Cultural and architectural developments reflect both regional diversity and imperial cohesion. Over time, global and regional conditions change. New trade routes shift economic balances. Advances in military technology alter the nature of warfare. Nationalist movements redefine political expectations in several provinces. Fiscal pressures and administrative complexity increase. These long-term developments shape the environment in which the empire functions during the early modern period. The First World War intensifies these challenges. Military demands, territorial occupation, and the collapse of Allied powers accelerate internal transformations already underway. The subsequent reorganization of political authority leads to the dissolution of the Ottoman state and the establishment of new national governments in its former territories. Yet the influence of the Ottoman Empire persists. Its administrative traditions, architectural forms, legal practices, and cultural patterns continue to shape regions across southeastern Europe, the Middle East, and North Africa. The empire's long history reflects how political structures adapt to shifting conditions and how regional interactions create lasting connections across continents.